I never told my son about my $40,000 monthly salary. Not because it was a secret, not because it was illegal, but because some truths lose their power when spoken too early. For 35 years, my son Marcus believed I was ordinary. To him, I was the woman who left home before sunrise, returned after dark, and collapsed quietly into her chair at night. The woman who reused grocery bags, who wore the same coat for years, who never talked about money. In his world, I worked in an office. Nothing more, nothing impressive, and I let him believe that. Because I didn't raise my son to respect money, I raised him to respect effort. I never told him that for nearly 2 decades, I was a senior executive at a multinational corporation, that I signed contracts worth millions, that entire teams waited for my approval before moving forward. Why would I? I grew up in a generation where dignity wasn't announced, it was carried, where wealth whispered. So I lived quietly. Same modest apartment, same worn leather bag, same discount stores. I saved, I invested, I became wealthy in silence. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, Marcus called me. His voice wasn't warm, it wasn't relaxed, it was careful. "Mom, I need to ask you something." I felt it immediately. Something was wrong. "Simone's parents are visiting from abroad," he said. "They want to meet you. We're having dinner on Saturday." A pause. "Please come." That please didn't sound like love, it sounded like fear. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. Silence. Then he said it. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple." Simple. That word stayed in the air long after the call ended, as if my entire life could be summarized in 5 letters, as if I were something to manage, to soften, to excuse. I agreed to come, but that night, standing alone in my apartment, I made a decision. If my son believed I was poor, if his wife's family came ready to judge, then I would let them. I would become exactly what they expected, a broke mother, invisible, naive, because I wanted to see the truth, not the version people perform, but the version they reveal when they think you have nothing. The silence at that table was no longer polite. It was heavy, thick, uncomfortable, the kind of silence people feel when something they believed was stable suddenly starts to crack. Veronica shifted in her chair. Franklin cleared his throat. Marcus stared at me as if he had forgotten how to breathe. I could feel it. The moment had changed. I was no longer the invisible woman at the end of the table. I was the problem they hadn't prepared for. Veronica tried to regain control. "I think you're taking this very personally," she said, forcing a smile. "We were only trying to help." Help. That word. People like Veronica always use that word when they're trying to justify cruelty. "I understand," I replied calmly. "Help often feels different depending on which side of the table you're sitting on." Marcus finally spoke. "Mom, please, we don't need to do this here." I turned to him. My voice softened, just for a moment. "Marcus, I spent 35 years protecting you from things you didn't need to know. Tonight, you need to know." He swallowed. Simone still hadn't looked up. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her fork. And then I began. 40 years ago, I was 23 years old. I wasn't sitting in luxury restaurants. I wasn't discussing wine or investments. I was renting a single room in a stranger's apartment. 1 bed, 1 chair, a hot plate. That was my world. I worked as a secretary in a small company. Minimum wage, no benefits, no safety net. And then I found out I was pregnant. The father disappeared the moment I told him. No calls, no explanations, no apologies. My family didn't help either. They told me I had embarrassed them. They told me I should fix my mistake. I packed my things and left, alone. Marcus's eyes widened. He had never heard this. Not like this. I worked until the day before I gave birth, and 2 weeks after Marcus was born, I went back. Veronica's lips pressed into a thin line. A neighbor watched him during the day, I said. I paid her with money I barely had. I worked 12-hour days. Then at night, when Marcus slept, I studied. Books from the library, free courses, anything I could find. Accounting, finance, management. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have family money. I had fear and determination. Fear of failing my son. Fear of becoming exactly what society expected me to become. I didn't stay a secretary. I asked questions. I stayed late. I learned things no one was teaching me. And when an opportunity came, one chance, I took it. I moved departments, then companies, then cities. Every promotion came with sacrifice, less sleep, more pressure, more responsibility. But I kept going, because failure wasn't an option. Marcus's face was pale now. You never told me any of this, he whispered. I didn't need you to admire me, I said. I needed you to be safe. Veronica shifted again. You're very resilient, she said stiffly. But what does this have to do with everything? I interrupted gently. Because while she was talking about wine prices, I was building something, piece by piece. By the time Marcus was in high school, I was already managing teams. By the time he went to college, I was signing contracts. By the time he graduated, I was an executive, a senior one. I paused, let the words settle. For nearly 20 years, I continued, I've worked at a multinational corporation. Franklin's eyebrows lifted slightly. Senior executive, I added. Veronica blinked at me. Marcus stared at me. What does that mean? He asked quietly. It means, I said calmly, I make decisions that affect thousands of employees. It means I negotiate contracts worth millions. It means my monthly salary is $40,000. The sound Veronica made wasn't a word. It was a breath she hadn't prepared to lose. Simone finally looked up. Her eyes were wide. What? She whispered. $40,000 a month. No one spoke. The power had shifted completely. Franklin laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. That's quite a claim, he said. I smiled. That's fair, I replied. Claims require proof. I reached into my faded canvas bag, slowly, deliberately, pulled out my phone, opened an email, and placed it on the table. The logo at the top was unmistakable. Franklin leaned forward. Veronica's face drained of color. Marcus picked up the phone with shaking hands. He read, once, twice. His breath hitched. Mom, he whispered. I leaned back. Believe me now? The waiter returned at the worst possible moment. Will that be all for tonight? I smiled. Yes, I said, and I'll take the bill. Veronica snapped her head toward me. Oh, absolutely not, she said quickly. This dinner is on us. I shook my head. No, I said softly. I insist. Franklin hesitated. The waiter waited. I placed my card on the table. A black card, the kind that doesn't get declined. The waiter's expression changed instantly. Of course, ma'am. He walked away. And that's when Veronica broke. This is inappropriate, she said sharply. You deceived us. I looked at her. No, I corrected. I allowed you to reveal yourselves. You decided who I was the moment you saw my dress. You decided my value before I spoke a word. I didn't pretend to be poor. I let you assume. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. I never meant. I know, I replied, and that's why this hurts, because you were embarrassed by me. Silence. Simone's face crumpled. She covered her mouth, tears spilling over. My parents, I didn't know they would. I did, I said quietly. That's why I came. The waiter returned. He handed me the receipt. Approved, he said respectfully. Veronica looked like she might faint. I signed, stood, and picked up my bag. Thank you for dinner, I said calmly. It was educational. Marcus stood quickly. Mom, please don't leave like this. I looked at him. I'm not leaving, I said. I'm walking forward. I turned to Veronica and Franklin one last time. You offered me $700 to disappear, I said evenly. Keep it. Then I looked at Simone. This has nothing to do with you, I added gently.